Writing the acknowledgement section of your dissertation or thesis might seem straightforward, but it's more than just a list of names. In this video, we'll unpack everything you need to know to write up a rock-solid acknowledgement section for your research project. Hey, my name's Emma, and in this video, we'll unpack the acknowledgement section using plain language and loads of examples. In addition to these examples, be sure to grab our free acknowledgement section template over on the Grad Coach blog. You can find the link to that, as well as loads of other free templates and resources in the description. So first things first, what exactly are the acknowledgements? Or rather, the acknowledgement section? Well, simply put, the acknowledgement section of your thesis or dissertation is where you give thanks to the people who contributed to your project's success. It's a relatively brief, less formal section, but there are still some important norms or standards that you need to follow. Don't worry though, we'll cover all of that here. So the first major question to address is, who should you acknowledge? As I mentioned, although this is a less academic section, acknowledging the right people in the right order is still important. Typically, you'll start with the most formal, in other words, the most academic support you received, and then move on to other less formal types of support. Sounds a bit conceptual? Let's take a look at a basic structure that you can follow when writing up your acknowledgements. First up is your research supervisor or advisor, as well as any academic staff that helped you out along the way. From there, you'll want to thank any funding bodies or sponsors. This only applies if your study was funded, of course. Now, you don't need to get into the details of the funding, but you should recognize this critical contribution to making your study a reality. Next, you'll thank any colleagues and peers who contributed to your work. For example, you may have asked your fellow cohort members for feedback on your written work or ideas. If so, give them some credit here. Last, but certainly not least, you'll thank your family and friends for their emotional support. If your gorgeous golden retriever kept you company during those long nights hunched over the keyboard, you can also thank him here. As you can see, the order of the acknowledgements goes from the most academic or most formal to the least. Importantly, your research supervisor or advisor generally comes first. This is because they are typically the person most involved in shaping your project, or at least they should be. Oftentimes, the supervisor is also involved in marking it, so it makes sense to put in a positive word here. All that said, remember that your acknowledgement section is personal, so feel free to adjust this order, but remember to pay close attention to any guidelines or rules provided by your university. All right, now that we've unpacked the what, let's dig into the more practical aspect of how to write the acknowledgement section. In terms of style, you'll want to strike a balance between conveying a formal tone and a personal touch. In practical terms, this means you should use plain, straightforward language and try to steer clear of any heavy academic jargon. At the same time, you'll want to avoid using any slang, nicknames, or overly casual language. A touch of light humor is also okay, but be careful to not overdo it. This is an academic document after all. To help you get started, here are a few phrases that you can use in your acknowledgement section. I would like to express my appreciation to, for their help with, I'm particularly grateful to, as they provided, I could not have completed this project without, as this allowed me to, special thanks to, who helped me to. In terms of positioning, you'll place the acknowledgement section towards the front of your document. Most commonly, it goes somewhere between the abstract and the table of contents, but be sure to check your university's brief to see if they have any preference. In terms of length, this section usually spans 2 to 3 paragraphs, but there's no strict word limit, unless your brief states otherwise, of course. If you're unsure, it's always a good idea to have a look at past dissertations and theses from your university, or even better, from your specific department to see what the norms are. Remember, you can also grab a copy of our free acknowledgement section template. You can find the link to that, as well as loads of other free resources in the description. So now that we've covered the what and the how, Let's look at a practical example to bring all of this together. Here's an example of a concise acknowledgement section. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to research supervisor, Professor John Smith, whose expertise and knowledge were invaluable during this research. My sincere thanks also goes to the University Research Fund for their financial support, which made this project possible. I am deeply thankful to my colleagues, John Wilkins and Jane Sharp, for their insightful discussions and academic support. Without your warm, kind support, this project would not have been possible. As you can see in this example, the acknowledgement section is short and to the point, and flows from formal through to personal support. As a rule of thumb, less is more when it comes to writing this section. And there you have it, the acknowledgement section in a nutshell. Now that you've got this section covered, the next thing you'll need to understand is how to write up a well-considered abstract. The good news is that we cover exactly that in this video right here. I'll see you there.